Ideally, it will be to do a short silent meditation, but if we all are exhausted, it might be very difficult. So instead of to do a silent meditation, again we'll say the Herzsutra mantra together and use the sound of the mantra to bring your mind back to the place with this body and once again raise the awareness. Okay? Raise the awareness. So 1 hour to go now. We'll try all our best to use this hour. What's that? Somebody wants to ask a question. You have a question? Sort it out?
I think I have no question. It's too complicated.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Yeah. That's good then. Okay. I'll read a little bit further. Then later I will check if you have some questions. Okay. Now I want to say a little bit to make a little clarification. I may have caused some confusion because I try to play with your minds, bringing two things to wake you up. So I want to make this some clarification. It's this. What we are talking about, for example, profound perception. Profound. What is first of all, why the term profound is used? Profound. The term profound is used. That perception, that I'm using that saying, I'm not saying a perception, I'm saying that perception. That perception. What is that perception? The perception realizing emptiness. That is here. That perception. Perception in here is not any kind of perception. Perception of realizing emptiness. Now, realizing emptiness, do you remember this morning earlier I said you can use realizing selflessness. In general in Buddhism, but in the Mahayana Buddhism we use this term emptiness. The perception of realizing emptiness is called profound perception. Profound perception. Now, first of all, why it's called profound? Then we will come to a little bit, some of you might seem quite not very sure what is perception. Then I will talk a little bit on that. Why it's called profound? It is called profound by two reasons. The first reason is profound, that the perception of realizing emptiness is profound because the subject what that perception is realizing is a very, very subtle reality. Subtle reality. Subtle reality. So, because of realizing that perception, which is realizing that kind of subtle reality, in other words, we can say ultimate reality. Ultimate reality. Subtle, or if you use the Buddhist jargon, you can say the ultimate reality. So this perception, which is realizing emptiness, is profound. First reason is because that perception realizes the ultimate reality. Therefore, it is profound. Ultimate reality in the sense of ultimately how the things and events are, that exist. Ultimate reality. This ball, as a ball, it exists as a ball in a conventional reality. But this ball also has an ultimate reality. Ultimate reality. That is, which we will talk a little bit later, but at this stage I will use the term, but don't worry about, what is that? I haven't heard this before. So the ultimate reality of this ball is this ball, which is absence of or empty of substantially existent. I use this term, substantially existent. Substantial, of course, it's metal. Why is not substantially existent? It is substantial, I can touch, I can feel, but this substantial has a different meaning. It is not saying substantial, it's not saying it hasn't got any touch or anything like that. It has, but substantial has a different meaning. Bear in your mind, bear in mind, substantial absence of substantially existent. Also another term which you will come across very often, the ultimate reality of this ball is, the existence of this ball is absence of inherently existence. Same. Use different terms, empty of substantially existence, empty of inherently existent, different terms, same meaning. But the term being just hold that. So each and every existence have a conventional reality and also have an ultimate reality. So to realizing the ultimate reality, and not just realizing, but realizing the ultimate reality directly is a very, very profound realization, because that kind of reality is very, very, in other words, the ultimate reality. Therefore, the first reason why it's called profound, because of that. The second reason why it's called profound, that realizing emptiness directly, that perception, why it is called profound. The second reason is this, because it is profound. That realization, that direct, realizing emptiness or selflessness, that realization is profound, because that realization get rid of the root of the suffering. Get rid of the root of the suffering, therefore it is called profound. I will read you one nice statement which I like very much. The statement is this, to talk about this direct perception, it is this. It is not difficult to perceive the reflection of the sun and the moon on the surface of a lake or in the water. It is not difficult to perceive, not difficult to perceive the reflection of the sun and moon on the surface of lake. But it is difficult to perceive their reflections in space. Do you want me to read again?
Yes.
I'll read again. It is not difficult to perceive the reflection of sun and moon on the surface of the lake, because there's something they can reflect on, you can see it. Not that difficult. It says, but it is difficult to perceive their reflection, the reflection of the sun and moon in the space. Yeah, so that is here talking about perception. Earlier somebody used, you used saying absence of duality, no, you use duality. That is here, perception. What is perception? Perception. Perception in a two levels. Sensory consciousness, sensory minds as a perception. Also mental mind, consciousness as a perception. Sensory mind perception is not necessarily very profound, but it has some sort of profundity we can talk. For example, when I eat this chocolate, put it on my tongue, and my tongue direct perception, taste of the chocolate. There's nothing between the tongue perception and the taste of the chocolate. It is direct. But no matter how I clearly and very elegantly try to explain the taste of the chocolate to you, you have no way to taste that chocolate directly. You can imagine. is happening. Oh, I used to have that chocolate. It tastes like that. And you may say, can you describe what is inside? And I will say, oh yeah, it's something, 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 something. And then you can imagine, but you have nowhere to taste what I'm, the taste of chocolate, what my direct perception. Direct perception, has that sort of very, very, there's nothing between the subject and the object. The subject and object are like, it is said, the chula chushakwa in Tibetan. Chula chushakwa means, this cup, half filled with water. And I bring another water, and then another jar, and pour half of the, to fill this cup. These two waters, the earlier half, the later I pour half, you cannot differentiate these two. So the perception, when the perception mind realizes its object, it becomes, the subject and object. There's no duality. There's no gap between the two. There's no, there's no veil. Veil, if you wear something like this, it's a veil. So that there's no veil. Subject and object are together. So profound perception. And particularly, the sensory perceptions are not that powerful, but mental perception are extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. When the mental perception, encounter its grand objects, particularly this kind of subtle reality, emptiness, impermanence, tremendous power. Therefore, it is called profound perception. Now, this direct realization of emptiness, it will not become direct realization right at the beginning. Right at the beginning, no matter how clever you are, no matter how much you understand the emptiness, your first understanding of emptiness will be conceptual understanding, not perceptual understanding. Your first understanding of emptiness will be not direct, the understanding of emptiness. It will be indirect. It will be conceptual, the minds, not the perceptual minds. When the conceptual understanding mind which understands emptiness, that mind is, bring into your, bring again and again and again and again, slowly, 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 it will become perception. It will become perception. Okay, that is the difference. If you have an initial, when you, for example, when through this studying, meditation, learning, discussion, when you start to taste the emptiness, when you taste in the sense of your mental state, your mind start to understand emptiness, the initial understanding is conceptual, not direct. Nobody will have that the first time, immediately direct perception. No. First time is a conceptual. When that conceptual understanding is repeated, and that is what meditation is. One of the purpose of the meditation is repeating what you have realized again and again and again. That is meditation. Last night I was talking about in the university, meditation means gom. Gom means get used to it, familiarize with it. More and more your mind familiarize with it, more and more, closer and closer your mind become perception. That is the magic power of the meditation. The magic power of the meditation is your initial understanding, the realization will become intuitive understanding, perceptual understanding. And that is the power of the meditation. Yeah? It's something which I thought maybe need to... Now here, what it is, do you remember this morning I warned you? I said, you have many, many good cultures. Also there are some junk cultures. And out of those junk cultures, I'll pick up one. Do you remember? Don't be too rigid, perfectionists. Don't be too rigid perfectionists. Same time, have the, sort of what's called the determination to move forward. And particularly if you people who are quite fairly new in the Buddhist path, in the Buddhist teaching, this subject is not that easy to understand. But it is good to taste it. In Tibetan we have expression. Some of you have heard this because I use this many times. Expression is this. Someden nilgite. Someden nilgite means if the food is very tasty, very delicious, very nutritious, then chew it even without having a single tooth by your gum. Because food is nutritious, delicious, tasty. So then, even if you don't have a single tooth, but chew with your gum. What's saying here is, if the subject is very important for your spiritual path, then even if you are struggling at the early stage, don't give up. Don't give up, continues. If you give up, when are you going to take it back? In the working place, you can say, okay, I'll give up this work, but I'll change another work. You can't do like this in here. This is what we need to understand. We need to realize. So therefore it's important. Anyway, I should shut up my saying. Yeah. Now I'll read a little bit because otherwise we will struggle to finish this sutra in 2 weekends. Oh, yeah. Now in the end of the second paragraph, where it says, and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Now don't worry about 5 aggregates. I will not explain at this stage because I will explain 5 aggregates later. There is a section which 5 aggregate is mentioned one by one. I will explain there. So I will not explain anything here. Also I will not explain here, saying also empty of inherent nature. That is the main topic which we need to look at later. So just time being, don't worry about those 2. Now we will move to the 3rd paragraph. The 3rd paragraph is this. Then through the power of the Buddha, which we talked a little bit, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Aya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? Now what's called the paragraph start the main body of the sutra. And I was told, although I can't read, but I was told in Japanese, in Korea, and also in Chinese, there's this shorter version of Heartsutra. In the Heartsutra, there are 2 versions, one longer version, one shorter version. The Tibetan that we have is the longer version. Longer version is the background and the conclusion. The shorter version is there's no background with this first 2 paragraphs which I have read, and there's no conclusion, just the main body. And I was told in Korean and Japanese and Chinese, they have this shorter version, not this longer version. And that's something quite interesting. It is important you to bear in mind this. Tibetan Buddhism, and as well as Chinese, Japanese, Korean, their root, the Buddhism came from India. The root is, in terms of the language, early morning I said, language is Sanskrit based. Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Vietnam, the Theravadan, Buddhism, in those countries, the origin will come from India. The language is based on Pali. So that is something different. Now, the one thing which is quite interesting is this, particularly if you look at in the Tibetan Buddhism. I'm not saying Tibetan Buddhism is the best. Don't understand in that way. But I want to say this, and because I think that is important, because His Holiness Dalai Lama repeat this again and again and again. Now, the Tibetan Buddhism, the Sanskrit texts, which in Tibetan Buddhism studied, are these great Indian masters came from Nalanda, Bikamalashila monastic universities. Really, really, really important institutions that time. Around Nalanda Monastery, monastic university in India is actually not very far from the Rajgir that I was talking about earlier. It's very close. And that was the earlier part of the Buddhist monastic university, and the later part, around 9th century, maybe a little bit later, Bikamalashila. These two monastic universities were really, really important institutions for the Mahayana Buddhism to become very, very amazing, studying what's called the Buddhist studying programs. So the Tibetan Buddhism is really mainly traced from those origins, and this is something quite interesting to look at, interesting to bear in mind. Now, anyway, the third paragraph, the first is starting the main body of the sutra, and that main body of the sutra, it starts with the Shariputra. Venerably said Shariputra, and this is quite interesting. Shariputra is in the Mahayana Sutra. Traditionally, the historical Buddhas, his main two disciples are the Theravadan monks. Historical Buddha Gautama, his two main disciples are the two Theravadan monks. One is this, Shariputra, one is called Mongalaputra. And they both actually came not very far from the Mongalaputra. I don't ask the spelling, I don't have any spelling. So these two monks, Shariputra, and these two are not like the Manjushri and the Avalokiteshvara, not like that. These two are real human beings like you and me. The actual Mongalaputra, he was born not very far from Nalanda monastic universities, and you can visit the village where he was born, Mongalaputra. And these two monks are traditionally called the Theravadan, or the follower of Theravadan teachings. But in here, interesting thing is Shariputra appears asking question to the how should the people who are interested, or the lineage practice this, and that is very interesting subject. Anyway, now the power of the Buddha. through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra. This venerable, this word venerable, I don't know in English what is the connotation. In English, in Tibetan, there are, in the monastic rule, at the Buddhist time, in the monastic rule, there are different ways to call, when you call somebody's name, like in UK they have this guy called sir or lady or blah blah blah, all those things. And in the ancient time, they have different titles to use to the elder monks, younger monks, and same as your same age or same time you become monk. So this in Tibetan is called Tsedang Demba Shari Datepo. Tsedang Demba. Tsedang Demba, literally it means living being Sharipu. Tsedang Demba. Living being Sharipu. Because why I said that is, the person who is explaining this is elder than the Shariputra. Elder than the Shariputra. So therefore, the calling younger who is Shariputra, then therefore it is called living being Shariputra. But here they translate saying venerable, but it doesn't matter. Shariputra. So Shariputra is one. There are people who are familiar with the Tibetan shrine, Tibetan shrine. In front of the Buddha statue, there are two small monks standing, holding like a walking stick. Do you have like that? No. This is, I think, the 16 arhats. Yeah, 16 arhats. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. So, usually two figures standing next to the Buddha's right and left. And these two represent Shariputra and the Mongolaputra. Yeah, standing. But if you go some very typical Mahayana Buddhist centers, not very much in Tibetan, but some of the typical Mahayana Buddhist centers, particularly those ancient Buddhist, Mahayana Buddhist, Buddha statue, next to the Buddha, like the Shariputra and Mongolaputra, two figures standing, but not Shariputra and Mongolaputra, Manjushri and Maitreya. It's exactly same standing, but the figure is slightly different. When you see the Shariputra and Mongolaputra, both are monks and wearing the monk's robe, holding the monk's begging bowl and the walking stick. But when you see the Manjushri and the Maitreya, I hope I guess right one. Anyway, I think Manjushri and Maitreya. And then the figure is slightly different, more not like monks, but more ornate, lots of jewels, and not holding the bowls, but have this lotus coming down here, and in here, Manjushri on the top of the lotus, there is a sword, and Maitreya on the top of the lotus, there's a small vase. And that is the Mahayana tradition. So according to the Mahayana Buddhism, Buddha's top two disciples are these two, so represent that there are two. And in general Buddhist tradition, Buddha's top two disciples are Shariputra and the Mongolaputra. Top two disciples. Yeah. So that here so in other words here there are three figures. Buddha, who is sitting quietly in the meditation on emptiness, profound perception. There's Shariputra asking the question. There's the Avalokiteshvara answering the question. So there are three figures in this. And there's one sun figure, very important figure. That is Bhagavati Panchaparamita. Bhagavati, do you remember this morning? Bhagavati Panchaparamita. That is the silent, I usually call silent figure. But not figure as a human being. In other words, that is the main subject. That is the main subject. The Bhagavati Panchaparamita. In other words, that wisdom, profound perfection of wisdom. That's the silent figure. Anyway. Now here, that is the question you ask. Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Avalokiteshvara. And this is the question. This is the question, and this is the, what you call the most famous question. And the question is, how should any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage, son of the lineage, train? So any son of the lineage, what is that? Lineage, son of the lineage. Rikipo, in Tibetan, Rikipo, son of the lineage, or Rikipomo, son of, daughter of the lineage. Now, is this. Very loosely speaking, very generally speaking, every sentient being is son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage. Because every sentient being has Buddha nature. Therefore, every sentient being is son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage. Now in here, little bit more, what's called restricted, using the son of the lineage. Here, the son of the lineage, refers to, here it says, lineage, who wishes to train the activity of profound perfection of wisdom. So, in here, son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage is not refers to every sentient being, but it refers to the person who has strong interest, interest in wanting to experience perfection of wisdom. In other words, wisdom realizing emptiness. How that person, the question is how that person should train his or her mind, to get that realization, realizing emptiness. And that is the question. Now, that is the question. Wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom. We already know about what does mean profound perfection of wisdom, and that is the Shariputra asked question to Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara. Now, in the sutra, as we read, dialogue is happening between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara. To us, individually, dialogue must happen to oneself. How I should train to have this realization, the profound perfection of wisdom, and search for the answer. And that's important. If you leave it as in the sutra, that's their business. Shariputra asked, now the business, the main the responsibility is Avalokiteshvara should answer perfectly. I have nothing to do. I just watch their drama. They're performing, I just watch them. That will not work. That is the not point in here. Yes, in the sutra, that's how setting is like that. Shariputra asked, Avalokiteshvara answer. Now, when it comes to oneself, then ask question to oneself. First of all, that whether oneself has the interest or not to have this perfection of wisdom or not. And that's the first asked question. Do I really have an interest to have this realization or not? If yes, then how should I train? How should I train my mind to have that realization? And that is very important. That sometimes people complain, saying, oh, so many blah, 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 but there's nothing to the daily lives. That is true. If you leave it blah, blah over there, then there's nothing to the daily lives. But blah, blah must take to the personal level. If you take blah, blah to the personal level, then there's so many things for your daily life. So many things. So many. And that is important. I know this, I receive this complaint a lot. So I want to answer that at the first place before go through that. Okay. Now the answer which that Avalokiteshvara is given is initially given in a two levels, in a shorter version and in a longer version. Answer which the Avalokiteshvara given to the Shariputra, Avalokiteshvara gave answer in the two versions. One is in shorter version, and the later one is more extensive one. Now, first I want you to look at the extensive one. And then before we ask do the extensive one, because tomorrow we are going to talk a little bit. So tonight, if you get time, if you have energy, I want you to think. The point is this, which I deliberately left late earlier, but I want to now to bring them. In the where's that one? That's called category. That's one called words categories. That's that one. Profound wisdom. Oh yeah. In the end of the first paragraph, when it says the Bhagwan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena. Categories of the phenomena. So this one I want now you to to bear in mind. Categories of the phenomena. What is the categories of the phenomena? I didn't say anything earlier, and now it's important. Can you see in the first paragraph, when it says the Bhagwan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena. So what is the categories of the phenomena? Now, sorry?
No.
Is got it?
Yeah, it's here. Ganz oben.
Konzentration auf die Vielzahl von Phänomenen.
Genau, ganz oben. Okay, we found the words because I could feel that people.
Okay, now this is something you can complain. If you want to complain, I will accept that. That is this. Now the categories of phenomena. Like in the West, those what you call the philosophers, or those say the scientists. Scientists all say that, for example, the what's called the people who studied the planet, what they call astronomy. Not astrology, not astronomy. Yeah, astronomy. last year or year before, there was a big debate, isn't it, whether they are going to get rid of one of the planet or not. And so to put it as a category, how many planets in the Earth, in the universe, and one planet, they say, I don't think that's a planet. That might be just one of those so many things in space, not planet. Like that. In Buddhism, all the existing things and events put into categories. Particularly if you study the Abhidhamma texts. One of the earliest Buddhist group of texts called Abhidhamma. When you read the Abhidhamma texts are texts to help us to increase, belongs to the third category, to raise, in the third basket, to raise the knowledge, Abhidhamma text. So in the Abhidhamma text, for us to understand all the existing things as they are, put into categories. Like the first category, quite always in the first category is the 5 aggregates. 5 aggregates. Now, I want you to go to the paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I want you to jump to the paragraph 7. Paragraph 7, which is starting saying, Shariputra, therefore in emptiness there is no form. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay. Now forget that negative term, no form, no feeling. Forget that no. What in German is a no? Vernehmen. Okay. Forget that. Forget that negative term, but otherwise leave it as it is. Now we are going to go. The first category, the first group is called aggregates. 5 aggregates. 5 aggregates. That's the first category. Okay? Second category is 6 sources. So now if you read no form, instead of no, just say form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factor, consciousness. Then leave it there. Those are the 5 aggregates. Then after that, then say no eyes. Leave it the no, but go through say eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. There are 6, and these are called. In the list, they are called 6 source power. 6 source power. Different terms are used, but I'm using that 6 source power. Do you get it? So 6 source or 6 sense, whatever term you use. Some use 6 sense. I use 6 source. The source is closer to the Tibetan word, Geshe. Then, after the mind, then start the third category, starting from no visual form, leave it no, then go visual form, sound, audio, taste, object, taste, touch, phenomena. There are 6. These are called 6 objects. 6 objects category. 6 objects. Then the next saying there's no I element. There's no I element. From there, leave it no, saying I element, so on up to, including mental element and the mental consciousness element. These are called 11 11, don't say 11, 6 constituents. 6 constituents. You know, or in Sanskrit called dhatu. 6 constituents. 6 constituents. Constituents. 6 constituents.
Zu kennen Fachbegriffe. Weißt du, was das bedeutet? Hast du nicht Hauptwerke? Peter, kannst du mal Leo nachschauen, mit DE nachschauen?
Was ist gefragt?
Diese
Konstituierende Elemente oder
genau, konstituierende Elemente.
Don't worry. Okay? Don't worry. Okay, that's the answer. So, up to here, what do we have? We have 5 aggregates, 6 sense objects, or 6, the source, 6 sources, and 6 objects. Yeah, 6 constituents. That's what we have up to now. Now, I will leave it here because this is not that straightforward. I will leave it here, but I want you to think this, because to talk about why I'm going there, to talk about emptiness, to talk about selflessness, we need to understand this. If we don't understand these basic things, 5 aggregates, 6 sources, 6 objects, 6 the constituents. If we don't understand these, then very, very difficult to say there's nothing in here substantially. Because we see there are many things. We know there are many things. There's a body, there's a feeling, there's a sensation, there's an object, so many things going on. Why they're saying there's nothing in here substantially? Talk about the Buddha's teaching on emptiness from the minor terms, or in general terms, selflessness. We need to understand what is here first. If we understand what is here, or what is around us clearly, then it is very easy to say, oh, that's not there, I went through. In this room, if we check one by one, say, there's a John, there's a Dave, there's a son, there's a this, but there's no lobster. It's easy to say, yeah, there's no lobster, because every human being in this room I went through, but there's no such as called lobster. But if you don't go through who's in there, very, very difficult to say there's no lobster, because you haven't gone through. And that is the best way to approach, to understand the selflessness or emptiness. Okay, now it's 5:45. We'll stop here, and can we say the praises to 21 Taras in German or in Tibetan? Which one is better? What do you say? How do you say normally? In Tibetan. Okay. Praises to 21 Taras in Tibetan.
Because he said this
You learned the tune from, I learned it this year to chanting 21 times.
No.
I I was trying to learn like you were doing the chanting.
Okay. Okay. Where is it? Got it? As this morning we started with the positive, constructive motivation, now is today's conclusion. We reach at the conclusion. And the conclusion is also very, very helpful, useful, conclude with a positive and constructive mind. And that is called the dedication. That's called dedication. So in here, when you do the dedication, reciting the 21 Tara prayers is something quite useful. Useful for the center. The center now have a new place, and to be successful the activities and development, and also useful for one's own spiritual development. So that's, for that purpose we are going to say the praises to 21 Taras, then few verses of dedication will come later, otherwise we'll talk a lot about that. First we will say the praises to 21 Taras. Om Geshe Tashi
자체 사심을 하자기 대기는 진착기 동마 정의 전체 이게 홍기 랭파는 보남니게마 자체대마게마 시마 냥행대 시주윤니마 소하 옥나양탕땡배 니파 쳔보 정바니마 자체군의 고라다웨 다이르니 남바게마 이게 주베나니 그때 리파우라드마니마 자체두를 샵니다베 홍기남발사바니마 리라만다라담비체 직텐송나요바니마 자체라이 조이남베 리타닥첸창나나마 다라니 즈베기이게 둔나마를 파니세마 자체라이 정남예고 라다미양지이데마 그네 고차다레 지기 즈단미랑양가세마 자체니마다와 예배 제니보라으랍세마 하라니 제도타라이 시도타프랭네세마 자체되니 손남그배 시레도다양단데마 듯남고라는 진성남 정바두레랍정니마 사레나기들바디담 자체라니 수사시.
Oh, yeah. Now we are going to say the dedication verses. The first verse is bodhicitta, to cultivate bodhicitta, Chanchuk Sanchuk Rinpoche. Second verse is dedication prayer for Lama Soba Rinpoche. And the third verse is dedication prayer for Longla prayer for His Holiness Dalai Lama.
36.
Seite 36. Seite 6.
Yeah. So those three verses we are going to say. Oh ja.